Yesterday, I started talking about injuries and vile deeds with the intention of talking about everything that is in the book that I like about it, but I ended up just explaining the injury system of this book and not talking about the awesome player options, feats, spells, monsters, etc, etc. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters, my name is Mr. Trosk, and today I want to talk about injuries and vile deeds again. If you haven't seen it, I done a video about this book yesterday where I explained the injury system, but today I want to take a deeper look at injuries and vile deeds by Colossus Games. You can get this book as a hardcover, you can get it as a PDF on Drivethru RPG, you can get it as a hardcover from their website, links in the description below, but if you want a great deal right now, you can get it as an add-on on their current backer kit campaign, so you can save up on the price, you can save up on shipping and all that stuff with great package deals, so make sure to hit a link in the description below. So without further ado, let's take a look at the PDF right about now. And here it is again, everybody, the second attempt of actually talking about injuries and vile deeds, the PDF, because the first episode of this video series, video series, I talked about the injury system, explained it, but there is much more to the actual injury system that I talked about. There's the injury system, there's a recovery system, there are special injuries, there are optional rules, all that kind of stuff, and there is a section here about villainous activities with like how your villains could torture the PCs and all of that stuff, and there's some really wicked stuff in here, and that is why the creators of this book dedicated page 8 and page 9 to like, they titled it Safety Tools and Session 0 and how to like communicate with your players, what this book is about and what they are okay with and what they aren't okay with, because some stuff in here can just be a little bit like on the sensitive side for some people, which I totally understand. I myself don't like to be on the receiving end of horror and blood and gore. I like using that as a tool to tell a story. I like telling a story, a horror story, and setting that scene and setting that atmosphere, but I don't like being on the receiving end. That's just me. That's just who I am, and that's perfectly, totally okay. So, I want to talk about a few things in here, but I won't be talking about everything, of course, again, because there's just so much. It is 222 pages thick, but there is much more than you would think. Now, as you can see, character options, I want to talk about like 1 or 2 character options. I want to talk, there is a subclass for at least one subclass for every base class in the 5th edition player's handbook. I want to talk about 1 or 2 feats in here, because I really like some of these feats, and I want to talk maybe about a spell, and there's a few monsters, maybe 1 or 2 monsters that I want to talk about, because there's one monster in here that has like some cool mechanics tied to it, which I really absolutely love for storytelling purposes, mechanical purposes, just 5th edition purposes. So without further ado, when I take a look at a book that has player options, I always go to the fighter first, because if you know me, I'm a big fighter fan. I like playing fighter. Fighter is my favorite class in the world in 5th edition, so we will be talking about the Champion of Pain. You were taught to fight with cruel efficiency, inflicting harm and following it up with more, taking down foes even before they are too exhausted to fight back. Your strikes land with vital accuracy, and your knowledge of your foe's anatomy grows with every combat experience. So the Champion of Pain is really cool because it really utilizes the injury system of the book. Like I said in the first video, the injury system of this book is the main attraction of this book, and a lot of the stuff in the book actually refers back to that system. The Champion of Pain, for example, at 3rd level, you learn to take even greater advantage of your foe's injuries. Your weapon attacks score a critical hit on a roll of 1920 against injured targets. Cool little passive ability that resembles the Champion ability, with, of course, it only being used against injured targets, so targets that already have an injury from the injury system, right? Additionally, whenever you succeed on a check made to learn about the creature's best aspects to injure, see identifying strengths and weaknesses to target on page 16. So there is a system where you roll and then you learn about a creature's strength and weaknesses in order for it to be easier to injure them. So whenever you use that system as a champion of pain of 3rd level, you treat that creature's injury threshold as 5 or lower. So basically you need to dish out 5 less damage. If you have that information, if you use an action or whatever it is to get that information about that creature, you can take that threshold of, for example, you need to dish out 30 damage to another creature, to a creature in order to injure it, right? To give it like a big injury, you need to do like 30 damage, right? For you, it then becomes 25 damage, which is actually pretty damn good. It's much easier to injure a creature that way. Whirlwind of Harm, you have trained to pinpoint and strike weak points as soon as they appear, inflicting just enough harm before moving on to the next target. You gain the ability to inflict an additional injury every time you take an attack action. So normally per attack action, so even if you have like, as a fighter, you have like 3 attacks or something like that, you can only, like the 3 attacks, the damage of that stacks, and that's the damage you do with that 1 attack action, although there's 3 attacks with that 1 attack action, and you compare that to the threshold, right? With the Whirlwind of Harm, whenever you get to a certain threshold to inflict a wound or an injury to a creature, you can then use the remaining damage you're doing to maybe do it again, potentially do it again if you deal enough damage, which is really, really cool. Student of Harm, you gain proficiency in Arcana, Insight, Nature, and Religion. Additionally, whenever you make a check to learn about a creature's best aspects to injure, the DC is reduced to 5, which is a really cool combination synergy with the first one. I really like this from a game design perspective. You have Impeccable Slayer, you learn about weaknesses, and then you need to do less damage in order to injure it, but when you reach level 10, it's actually also easier for you to learn about creatures' weaknesses, which actually makes sense because you've been doing it so much. You've been learning about creatures' weaknesses, trying to harm them, trying to injure them, and you're just like learning on the job, right? Which makes a lot of sense, not only from storytelling perspective, thematic perspective, but also game design perspective. And that's why I like the Champion of Pain. Just as an example, it really utilizes the injury system while still really feeling like a fighter. And like I said in my first video, this book isn't for everyone because, like the Champion of Pain, because it's utilizing the injury system that is in this book, this is not just like a plug and play class that you just can take a class from this book and play it in any 5th edition game. You can only play this class in a 5th edition game that utilizes the injury system from this book. Then there is the Wizard School of Nocerology. Wizards who study the arcane science of pain do so for many reasons. Some may do so in hopes of elevating it in their patients, others because they desire to know the most efficient methods for inflicting suffering. So the School of Nocerology, I had to Google the pronunciation because I never heard of that word, but it is a thing. Student of Pain. So as you can see, this again uses the injury system of the book. So again, this is not a plug and play class. You can only really use it if you use the injury system from Injuries and Vile Deeds. Beginning when you select the school at 2nd level, spells that inflict injury or that require attack rolls have their gold and time required to copy it into your spellbook halved. So as you can see from this little bit of text, I will get to that a little bit later. There are spells that inflict injuries. So you have the injury system where you can try to injure a creature and all that stuff. There are spells that actually inflict injuries on creatures, expanding on the injury system almost. Inflict agony at 2nd level. You master over your mastery over other creatures' nociception becomes palpable. You treat injury thresholds as 5 or lower, so kind of like the same as with the Fighter of Pain, the Master of Pain, or whatever, the Fighter of Pain subclass for spells that you cast, and the saving throw DCs of spells that you cast that inflict an injury increase by 1. Again, there's spells that inflict an injury. There's always a DC to that spell, and it just increases by 1, and the thresholds for the damage that you do is lowered by 5. 5. That's really good to already have at 2nd level. It's really, really powerful. This one I really like, Shared Pain. At 6th level, you have learned to link 2 creatures' bodies such that physical harm to one is shared by the other. As a bonus action, you can choose 2 hostile creatures within 30 feet of each other and of you. Each creature must make an intelligence saving throw against your wizard spell save DC. On a failed save, the next time the other creature becomes injured, the creature that failed its saving throw also gains the same injury. If it has already had that injury, it instead gains the next highest severity of that injury if possible. Once you have used this feature, you may not use it again until you finish a short or a long rest. I really like that. I really, really, really like that. This way, you can really be like the crowd control wizard, inflicting as much injury as possible, because the next time the other creature becomes injured, the creature that failed its save also gains the same injury. So it doesn't say the next time you injure a creature, it says the next time a creature becomes injured, meaning that if that fighter we talked about injures the creature, and the fighter is really built around injuring as many creatures as much as possible, the Shared Pain feature actually has a lot of synergy with that. And by that reason, again, also this artwork makes me go, ugh. It's really, really, really wicked. Next up, let's take a look at some of the feats, because the feats here are really thematic for the book and really add to the injury system, to injuries and vile deeds as a whole. For example, there is there are feats called, for example, Cruel Spellcasting, where it basically does the same thing the wizard subclass in this book already has. The saving throw DC for your spells increases by 1 if the creature making the saving throw is injured. The DC further increases by 1 if the creature has an injury of deadly severity. So when they have a deadly severity thing going on, they even have a harder time saving from your spells. You treat damage thresholds as 5 or lower when using a spell to inflict injuries on NPCs and monsters, and your spells ignore 5 points of the damage loss if you fail to inflict an injury. As I said in my previous video, when you try to inflict an injury, after all the damage is calculated and all that kind of stuff, you also have some damage loss, because you try to focus on inflicting the injury, so you're not trying to focus on inflicting as much damage as you can. You actually lose a bit of the damage you do if you try to inflict injuries on other creatures. There's a combat medic here, there's a cruel cutter here. You treat damage thresholds as 5 or lower when using a weapon to inflict injuries. Whenever you inflict an injury of handicap severity or higher, which is the 3rd level, you can attempt to terrify your enemies. Each creature within 60 feet of you basically becomes terrified of you. You gain advantage on intimidation checks against creatures to which you have dealt an injury or of handicap severity or higher within the last 30 days. There's Gambler's Constitution. Whenever you would gain an injury of dangerous severity or higher, you can expend the number of hit dice to prevent the injury. Basically, you also gain an extra number of hit dice equal to half your proficiency bonus, rounded down. These are D10s, and you can expend those in order to try not to be injured. There's one hardened combatant, which is, I think, something every fighter or barbarian ever who uses this book should take, because it's extremely simple but also extremely powerful. Your maximum hit points increase by your level, and you gain an additional hit point at each new level. You add 10 to your damage thresholds for injuries. So creatures need to do 10 extra damage against you to be able to inflict an injury on you. That's a lot. That is really, really high. You recover from lasting effects in half the usual time. Again, incredible. This is an incredible feat. It's something you might glance over because it's like a small little feat, which is like a few things, few short sentences, but it is really, I think, in game, it could be really powerful. There's a combat medic here, all kinds of feats, I don't know. Let's just take a look at some others. There's Painful Spellcaster. Whenever you cast a damaging spell that allows a saving throw to reduce or negate the damage, you may choose to attempt to inflict an injury on one of the targets of the spell. So normally, inflicting injuries is only when you do an attack attack roll. So if you cast a spell that has an attack roll, or you swing your sword, or you shoot your bow. So spells that have a DC tied to it to negate damage, so it's not an attack roll spell casting thing, but it is a DC spell casting thing. Normally you're not allowed to do to inflict injuries. With this feat, Painful Spellcaster, you can attempt to inflict an injury on one of the targets of the spell, applying any damage loss as normal. Additionally, you may forgo any benefits of casting the spell at higher levels to instead choose another target of the spell to injure, or for every additional spell level you use to cast it. There is a Poison Master, a Ranged Healer, a Swift Slayer, and I said it before and I will say it again, for this book to work, it is amazing. Some of the game design here, how everything is synergized with everything in this book is just amazing, but all of your players need to really embrace the system for it to work. And of course, there are creatures to which you can inflict harm and injuries, and these creatures can of course also inflict harm and injuries against you. And one of the most interesting one has to be the Vernacean Bloodmoth. I really think this thing is absolutely incredibly cool. This is a cow. So just a cow for size, right? A banana was too small, so they used the cow. And I really love this stat block. It's only a challenge 2, but believe me, it's not a challenge 2. This is a challenge much higher. It's not a challenge 2. I'm sorry, but it's just made too difficult. So the Bloodmoth basically has a few things going for it. It has strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma like any other creature. But the thing that I want to talk about is its action and its bonus action. It has piercing melee weapon attack +5 to hit, which is not really that hard, well, that high, but it hits 2d8 +3, so 12 piercing damage, and the target must make its DC 13 Constitution saving throw or gain a special injury of dangerous severity called punctured. While injured in this way, a creature takes an additional 5 damage from any attack made against them. If a creature would gain this injury again, it instead takes another 5 additional damage from that attack, total of 10 additional damage. A creature automatically recovers from the punctured injury at the end of a short rest in which it spends at least 1 hit die. A creature can also attempt to recover at the end of its turn by spending a hit die without regaining hit points and succeeding on a DC 13 Constitution saving throw. So that in itself is a pretty damn tough thing to beat, especially if you get this creature and then, I don't know, you take 2 of these creatures against a level 5 party, and then you have 2 minions, or I don't know, maybe they are the boss and they use the Bloodmoth as their minion, I don't know, just working together with any other creature. This can become really dangerous really quickly, because not only do you get basically, if it hits you, you get a punctured injury, which is a dangerous injury. So you get 5 more damage from any attack made against you. 5 more for any attack made against you. So in other words, if this thing has hit you once, you are utterly fucked. Especially if it has friends who are also hitting you, right? So on top of that, it has a bonus action. As a bonus action, now it has a recharge of 5 and 6. I'll give you that. I mean, there is a chance it won't recharge. As a bonus action on a turn in which the Bloodmoth hit an injured creature with its piercing probiotics attack, the Bloodmoth can cause the creature to lose 7 hit points, 2d6, with the Bloodmoth regaining hit points equal to the lost amount. This is a really, really, really powerful thing, because it is not a subsequent attack. It is just, it attacked you, and then it can choose to use a bonus action to drain you out of 2d6 hit points, and then gain that as hit points. So it basically comes at you like it comes at this cow. It pierces you, and then it starts sucking the blood out of you, and it starts healing from that blood. And because there is a risk of this video becoming way too long for the YouTube algorithm, I decided to just pick a random card from the spell card deck that you can get with the book. There's also a deck of injury cards, which are small little cards you can give to your players when they have a certain injury. You just take that card, give that to your players, and then they know what that injury does on the short term, what it does the long term, what DC they need to roll in order to get rid of that injury, and all that stuff. Shuffle it a little bit, right? Just take the top card, I don't know. Just take a random card from this thing. This is called a 6th level Necromancy. spell called Vile Infection, right? Duration, concentration, touch, components, VSM, one action. You reach out and touch the rotting flesh of your enemy, afflicting them with a virulent disease. The target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or gain a special injury of deadly severity, called Infected. While injured in this way, creatures cannot regain hit points. The DCs to remove their injuries other than this one increases by 5. Creatures immune to disease are not affected by the spell, but effects that remove disease do not remove the injury. There's more to it, but just to give you an idea of like what the creators were thinking when they were creating these spells. And just to round up this 2-video series about injuries and vile deeds, I want to kind of summarize what I think about it. I think it is awesome in many ways. The game design mechanics of this are awesome, especially the way how everything synergizes with everything. The subclasses synergize with the feats, and the feats synergize with the spells, and the spells synergize with the subclasses and the injury system, and the torture system, and everything synergizes with, gets like referenced back to the injury system. And I think in terms of game design and just general like writing and mechanically, this book is absolutely among one of the best books I've ever seen. Also, the artwork is great, the writing is great. There is just 1 or 2 things that I want to say about it. The first one being some explanations are unnecessarily hard to grasp, which is really hard for a writer to do, to have something that's in their head and they totally understand, to then translate that to dumb people like me who have to read it like 5 times in order to get it. And then there is, what was the other part? Oh yes, everybody needs to embrace the injury system before this book works. You cannot have a party where like 2 people are like, yes, I'm using stuff from this book, and the other people are not like, no, I don't want to use stuff from this book, because as soon as you as a game master introduces the injury system, everybody is affected. So this book is really for parties who, as a party, decide to use it. Until next video, bye-bye.